This is the Untitled Car Show, with your hosts for the evening, Ike.
Silly! It's your day! That's what you've been practicing for!
And Proc.
Hey, buddy, roll your window down so I can ask you about your dead friend.
We hope you thoroughly enjoy the show. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone out there in Radio Land, this is just a little Ike solo today, so we're going to be joined here in a second with one of the members from Opposite Lock. We're going to be discussing some interesting things, so look forward to that, and we'll be back here with just a second with our guest for this evening. Hooray! And we're back, and I'm here with Will, who's got some interesting stories. Will, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Like I said earlier, this is the big bossy boss from Opposite Lock. If you've been on there, you've known him. He's quite the daily poster, if not more often than that. And I understand.
Yeah, fair enough.
I understand you were in driving around in Africa recently.
Yeah, well, not that recently, but It was 2008. I was over there for a year.
Yep.
Normally, I live in Canada, but I was over in Ghana, so it was special. Africa, if you have a chance to go, I would say go. And I have some good stories, so we can get into that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of car, first off, did you have while you were driving around when you were down there?
Oh, well, this is a bit of a misnomer because it was mostly public transportation. So I guess, driving is not exactly correct, but these are road tripping stories. So it was, yeah.
I got you. I can't imagine. I've been on public buses in D.C. and Chicago. I can't imagine driving around in another country.
In the bus?
Yeah, in the bus. So what was that like?
Oh, it was good. They have, so normally, like in DC and Chicago and here in Ottawa, we have big buses that are made by New Flyer. Like they're from Pennsylvania. They're huge, right?
Yeah.
In Africa, they use microbuses. So they use like Mercedes A vans is one type. They use the Nissan Van, which is spelled UR, and then the word van, and they use like little Kias and stuff.
Yeah.
They only take about 10 to 20 people, well, maybe 10 to 15 people at a time.
It is as if to make the smell worse by compressing everyone into as small a space as possible.
Yeah. I mean, especially you got to keep in mind, man, Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, these countries, it's not, they don't have winter. It's not cold. It's between, my Fahrenheit's so bad, but in centigrade, it should be above 80 most days, like between 80 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit, pretty much every day of the year.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's all right when the bus is moving, but when you sit in a 3-hour traffic jam in a bus with no air conditioning and 100 degrees.
Yeah, I would probably vomit, which would probably make it smell slightly worse, I would imagine.
Yeah, that would not be ideal.
Yeah. So, like you said, you're from Canada, so I'm already trying to do the centigrade Celsius math and all that. So believe me, I'm terrible at it, so don't worry about doing any of that. So we talked a little bit before, so you said you had a couple of stories.
So the first like the mini buses in Ghana, they're called trotros.
Yep.
That's just the name of them, and it doesn't matter what type of bus it is. It's a trotro. And the first story is we're driving along this main road in Accra, which is the capital city. It's about 2 million. It's by far the largest. And we're driving along and we'll come up to, it's a 6-lane road. We'll come up to this pedestrian crossing.
Yep. And
all the light goes red. And the one thing they do in Africa is respect the traffic lights, or at least in Ghana where I was.
Uh-huh.
And so the light goes red. So everyone starts slamming on their brakes. And I just noticed that we're kind of weaving in and out of traffic and not slowing down at all. And so I'm like, this is a little interesting. And then the driver just jerks the wheel hard right. And the trotro just goes across all 3 lanes, up over a curb, and into a bus shelter.
What? Like into one of the areas waiting for people to hop onto the bus?
Yes, but thankfully there was no one in it, or they saw us coming anyway. But yeah, the trotro, the driver lost his brakes completely, mechanical failure. So instead of going over the crosswalk, he was just going to crash. So that's what we did. We hit the curb. We were probably doing, I don't know, maybe 30 miles an hour, which is fast for hitting a curb.
Yeah. I can't imagine what the bus waiting area was made out of either. Like here, they're made out of like steel.
It was similar. It was like a steel kind of thing. I mean, you got to remember too, the weather's warm, so they don't really build a lot of shelters, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Trotro sounds like a delicious snack, by the way. It sounds like
Well,
chocolatey delicious, and I'm guessing not anything close to that.
no, it's more like a minivan, so
Yeah,
not so good for eating.
yeah. It's I can't imagine. So from Canada down in Africa, like how long into the whole trip was it before you got onto this van that basically careened into a bus stop?
Not long. I mean, I don't know. I think it was a couple months,
Hmm.
maybe December. I came in August. It might have been December, but by then I had traveled around a bit, so I had an idea that,
Yeah,
beware.
yeah. You knew what you were getting into. So I don't. It's just such a crazy thing to me that they use the small little buses instead of using those big. I guess the streets aren't wide enough for them, or they're probably not paved well, so they need something that's a little lighter and a little bit more agile.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking about. I mean, I think. No, I don't know what's in your head, but
Yeah.
I think you're thinking about public transport in the wrong way. See here,
Hmm.
here in Ottawa, and I think in DC too, right? Like the subway's run by the city, right,
Yeah.
or some governmental organization, right?
Hmm.
In Ghana, no, it's not like that. It's all private operators. So, and they basically them and their like sort of union or collective basically decides all the routes. So the Trotro, like they're not uniform. They're not all owned by the city or anything. They're all different.
Okay.
And the drivers just decide, oh, I want to go this, like I'm going to drive this main route, like down the main drag, or I'm going to drive over from this neighborhood to this neighborhood or whatever. And I guess through the kind of the chaos theory of it, there's certain set routes. And so they all have worked this out. So it's like a privatized system completely.
That sounds like the most chaotic. Like, how do you know where to get on and where to get off, and like what goes where? Like,
There's only like hands-on learning, man. There's no maps.
so if when you're sitting there at the like, so who builds the bus stops? I wonder.
Oh, the city does because the city does build the bus stops, and then
Yeah.
there's also they have what they call motor parks.
Yeah.
Which I mean, you talked about chaos. A motor park is awesomely chaotic, man. It's insane. They got like 1,000 buses slammed all in there, and then so the way you know where the bus is going
Yeah.
is there's a driver of the bus, but there's also a guy who operates the door and collects the money.
Hmm.
He's called a mate, a Trotro mate. And so his job is to like rustle people up to go to the bus. So if we're going to like one place in the city is called a Denta. If
Yeah.
we're going to a Denta, the Trotro mate will sit there by the bus in a motor park and call out like a Denta, a Denta, a Denta. And then if you're going to a Denta, you pay the guy and you climb on. And then as you go along, like the stops are all named. And I mean, I don't know, how do you name things? They just are. So
Yeah.
as you go along, the mate will call out the stops, and then you hopefully you know which one you're getting at and get off. But I got lost a lot in the beginning.
Well, it sounds like you would because you're sitting there. You got a guy basically yelling at you one thing, and I I'm still like 7 years into DC. I can't tell you like how to get from one end of the city to the other end, like what you're gonna pass by and everything. So I,
Yeah,
I still don't understand the buses here. I can't imagine down there. It's got to be like
yeah. I mean,
the
I
fact that
don't
they're everyone's still alive down there kind of
know.
surprises me.
Yeah, this is a common sort of misconception before you go down to Africa is,
Hmm.
war and criminals and this kind of thing. And it's not, yes, there are criminals. I was robbed a few times, but the biggest threat to your health and safety in Africa is number one, malaria, and number two, traffic accidents. And everything else, war criminals, all that stuff is way down the list.
Well, yeah, the malaria, yeah, definitely stereotype, but yeah, I can't. What were the Trotros in good repair? Now I'm fascinated with these things. Were they like decent vehicles? Like, or
Not, no, I mean, no, they're not in good repair. I mean, I just told you the
yeah,
story of the one where we lost the brakes.
yeah.
So
Like, if you had to
it,
guess, like the average age of one of these things, what do you think?
um, average age 12.
Yeah, yeah, that's about the point when like I don't know how it is in Ottawa, but here in DC, like it seems like all like the cars and everything that become taxi cabs are about that age, and they scare the living shit out of you when you get into them. And it's like it's a Crown Vic from like 1987, and like the springs have gone from here to the moon and back a couple times. I can't
Yeah.
imagine a bigger. Were there seatbelts?
No, no, no. Maybe a few people wear their seatbelts, but I have another little quick story about that.
Yeah.
One day, one of the girls that I met through the exchange program said, "Oh, my friend's coming. We're gonna go pick her up from the airport." And I said, "Okay."
Hmm.
I'm doing nothing because anyway, there was a big long break in between the semesters of school where I
Okay.
was on exchange. And anyway, so I was doing nothing, like no job, right? Nothing to do, just sitting. So I
Hmm.
said, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll go down." So we went down, and the girl gets in this taxi. It was this. We brought a taxi over, and it was this Kia Pride. They call them. They're like a little dinky Kia thing.
Yeah.
That's the rebadge for it. Well, it's the original Ford Festiva,
Oh, that's good.
if you remember.
Yeah.
So anyway, but this is like a wagon version of it. But anyway, she gets in there and she tries to use the seatbelt, and everything in Ghana that doesn't get used often is covered in red dust. And this girl tries to put her seatbelt on, and the thing like won't come because no one's used it, so it's like jammed, right? All the dust has jammed it. And she finally pulls it across her chest and clicks it in, and no one else in the car is wearing a seatbelt. And there's just this huge red line of dust like diagonal across her chest from the seatbelt just sitting in the back unused for the last, years.
Millennia, probably. Yeah. So like everything gets covered in this. I think I've heard of this before, but it's like what there's a lot of clay or something that gets blown up, and that's what covers everything in it.
I don't know what it is really. It's just the soil is red, and if it's windy, then things are going to get red. Everything gets red, and it's annoying. And if you suck at sweeping like me, it makes life difficult.
I so basic. Yeah, any place dusty like here we got humidity we're fighting with, and that breaks down cars fast.
Okay.
And I've been out where it's been dusty before, like Arizona and places like that. Ghana, from what I like, what's in my head is I'm thinking hot, humid, and dusty. That
Yep.
yeah. So I can't imagine. So like 12 years in Ghana's got to be like 24 years like anywhere else in the world, I'd imagine.
Maybe. I mean, keep in mind like they don't get salt and stuff like that, so the
Yeah,
cars weren't very
yeah.
rusty really.
Rust doesn't scare me. Like I'm originally from Chicago, and rust is one of those things where you go, okay, this is kind of bad that it exists, and you can kind of see it breaking down your car. But it's
Yeah.
almost worse when it's like humidity and dust and like that sort of like unseen killer where like it just gets into every little nook and cranny, and then one day the brakes on your Tortor cookie may go out. It
The reason the brakes go out, they practice, at least in my opinion,
yeah,
they practice something I like to call RTF maintenance, which is run till failure
yeah.
maintenance. So they drive it and they drive as long and as far as they can, and then when things fail, then they go, "Oh, I should fix this or that or whatever."
Yeah. Like it doesn't need an oil change. It still works. Well, brakes still work. It's fine. But
Yeah.
I've dated a couple of girls who used to run that sort of system on their cars, and it used to scare the living shit out of me. Like speaking of being in a hot, humid place, I was with a girl once out in Arizona, and her tires on her Saturn, because it was so hot and all the time, would
Yeah.
just it literally melted to the point where it looked like they were slicks,
Wow.
and I could see the steel belts coming out, and it was very, very unnerving. And I remember I drove the car for her for about maybe like 5 miles. Driving
Mm.
a car with steel belts basically is the freakiest sort of thing because the car wants to go sideways on you all the time. It doesn't want to go straight because like I could like feel the steel belts
Mm.
trying to unwind. And then she was going to drive halfway across. Well, she was going to drive all the way across the country, and the
On
tires blew.
those? Jeez.
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
She was driving with her aunt, and they made it. She was in Salt Lake City, and she made it all the way to the outskirts of Salt Lake City. Like that was right when the tires blew. So it was like, good job.
Terrifying.
So, any more stories out of Africa? Because I'm
Oh yeah.
fascinated with these buses. To be perfectly honest.
Well, I got another one here. So
Yeah.
we're in another trotro. We decided that we were gonna go. Me and two friends decided that we were gonna go to like an eastern region. Accra is right in the middle of the geographical. Well, it's not in the middle. It's the middle east to west along the coast, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So we're gonna go east. And anyway, we got in this Trotro, and the best part about this ride to begin with was this guy. He didn't have as many passengers because we had a big deep freeze shoved in the back of the van. So already we're winning.
Yeah.
And anyway, we got
I
out
guess
on
it's
the
air
road.
conditioning.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we got out on the road and we're driving, and they don't have any. Well, they have one 4-lane highway, but this wasn't it.
Yeah.
And we're driving along, and there's we're catching up on another Trotro ahead of us that's going kind of slower.
Mm-hmm.
But this 3.5 ton like Hyundai kind of flatbed truck caught up to us as well.
Yeah.
And he decided that he's going to pass us. And so that was fine. And then a pickup truck also caught up to the Hyundai, like just after he passed us. And the pickup truck, a Nissan pickup truck also caught up, and he passed us as well. And then the Hyundai and the pickup truck caught up to the Trotro that was just ahead of us. And they decided that, the Hyundai who was in front decided he was going to pass the Trotro going up this hill.
Yeah.
And so he did. And then the pickup truck decided that he shouldn't wait, to pass one at a time. He should also pass at this moment as well. So now they're going 3 wide on a 2-lane road up a hill, right?
Brilliant. Yep.
Brilliant. I know. Amazing decision making. And they go over the crest of the hill, and we're like further back because we're way down by this big freezer.
Yeah.
And as we crest the hill, we look down, and the pickup truck, I don't know what happened, but the pickup truck is just on its roof, perpendicular to the road, in the middle of the road. And there is he was loaded down with crap. There is crap all over the road. I don't know what stuff, but it was just random junk everywhere.
Yeah.
And this guy's sitting on his roof perpendicular to the road. So we come up to this scene, and I'm just wondering what happens now, right? Do they have tow trucks here or what?
Yeah.
So anyway, we get up there, and everyone gets out of the Trotro and runs up to this pickup truck, and I would run up too because I want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And everyone pushes on the truck, flips it over, and then pushes it to the side of the road and just grabs this stuff off the road and throws it in the truck so everyone else can continue. And the driver of the truck, he was out and about. He was bloody, but he was talking on a cell phone, so I guess he was all right.
That's pride in your civics, I guess. We'll take this wreck into our own. How do you end up on your roof, though? I had a very similar experience with that in Illinois. I was at my little college campus. I made a right-hand turn. I came down to this blind intersection, and there was a 04 Mustang just sitting quietly on its roof. Somehow it was flipped in the middle of the intersection. How the hell do you flip a car?
I've watched a lot of dash cams,
Yeah.
And I have an opinion on how one flips a pickup or a tall vehicle. Now, a Mustang, I don't know.
Yeah.
But a pickup, I think what happened was because they were going 3 wide, perhaps someone was coming the other way.
Yeah.
They didn't see him until it was too late. And so what the pickup truck driver did, who was all the way left, tried to swerve to the right,
Mm-hmm.
but either forgot or didn't account for the Hyundai truck there and then hit that truck.
Yeah.
And then was thrown to the left and then basically tried to correct it by turning really hard right and just rolled the thing. That's what I think.
It basically pulled a pit maneuver on himself.
Yes,
yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
But he just tried to pull a really hard right turn at probably, I don't know, maybe 50 miles an hour and just not going to do that. So it just rolls over instead.
Yeah. Ass over tea kettle or whatever the hell the expression is. Yeah.
I've never heard that expression.
I don't know. I may have just made it up. I think I've heard that before. Ass over tea kettle. Yeah, something like that. Well, tell us a little bit about where you're at now. What are you driving as your daily driver as we speak?
So right now, I have this ridiculous car. I'm sure everyone on Opposite Lock has seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2003 Cavalier that has been bro trucked.
Yes.
Because it used to be a lowrider. And what happened was the suspension collapsed.
Always fun.
Yeah, so then it just sat on its bump stops. And then I drove it down to DC and back on its bump stops because I'm a good decision maker.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well.
And so then one of the other Opponauts, his name is Zippy on the site, he came over and he helped me. And we put on an OEM suspension, and then the car never settled onto its springs properly.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, like it just won't. Even though everything's torqued to spec, and I've double checked it, like it just won't settle down. So it sits about half inch, like 3/4 inch up compared to most other cars.
Gotta love it. And I must
Yeah,
admit, driving around in bum stops in DC puts you amongst like the top 10% of people who actually give a shit about their car, sadly, around here.
yeah. It was when we drove back, it's about 9 hours from Ottawa to DC or DC to Ottawa. And when we drove back, it was like over every expansion joint. I'm just like, this does not have to be like this.
Yeah, there's nothing like driving a car for a very long time in one stretch when you realize I need to make a permanent change to this vehicle because this thing is killing me.
Yeah, it was tough, but yeah. So the Cavalier, I bought it for about 3,000 Canadian dollars 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and just under. And it's I don't know, it's nuts. It's got like ridiculous racing buckets, a huge tachometer that sits on the dash. It is really, really, really loud because it has this ridiculous fart cannon on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I have a good time in it. Everyone else thinks it's stupid, but hey.
But I embraced that. I had a '04 Saturn I did crazy shit to, which is basically the successor, I guess, to the Cavalier because it eventually became the Cobalt, which is the same thing as the Ion.
Okay.
So just doing crazy shit to those cars is a blast. You gotta love it. I didn't throw a crazy tack in it, but I had a crazy big speaker system in it. It was sitting on like Cobalt SS suspension bits. It was just like everyone was going, "This car, you put way too much time and way too much effort into it, and
That's
it looks
yeah.
worse than when you started."
That's the problem I'm having. But in my case, it was mostly the former owner who did a lot of the modifications,
Yep.
and that basically helped me buy it for really cheap. Because the best modification ever, the one I got rid of as soon as I got the car because they were a real pain, was the guy had put 4-point racing belts through the rear seats, and they just like went up at an angle so no one could sit in the rear seats in a four-door car,
Yeah. Basically,
which
the
is smart.
yeah.
And girls hated them. And anyway, these racing belts like came through the seats, and then you have to like adjust them and clip them all in multiple points and this and that. And man, not fun. I hated those. When I had those, me and my roommates just like did not wear seat belts.
Well, there's nothing worse than a fucking minute long chore when you get into the car.
Yeah, exactly. And the girls
Yeah, they hate those things.
really hated those seat belts, man, because they sit right on their chest.
Well, not only that, but the last thing one wants to think of when they get into the car is like, I'm going to die, possibly. Like, you don't want like the kind of stuff you think is cool when you put it in a car, like racing harnesses, racing like fire extinguishers and shit. I think women see that and go, "This guy can't drive. That's why he needs a fire extinguisher and all the extra seatbelts."
That could be. I mean, I think it was just the way the seatbelt sat, but those only lasted about 2 weeks, and
Yeah,
then I was straight to the junkyard to get a pair of seatbelts out of a normal Cavalier.
yeah. That's one of the things I love about those cars is they are the perfect thing for like a junkyard. You go to a junkyard, there's a whole bunch of them sitting around with a whole bunch of parts. So you can find it in every shape and color you want to find it in.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's people really hate on that type of car, and I can see why. It's not a great car to drive by any means. It's ridiculous. It's
Hmm.
like stupid loud and all this. I mean, mine, but in general, they weren't a high quality vehicle. But the engines, the L61
Hmm.
last generation engine, it really takes a beating. I mean, I just rolled 202,000 kilometers, so that's about I don't know, 130,000 miles. So not nothing.
No, like I know four, I put 200,000 miles on in the course of 5 years because I'm a crazy person.
Wow.
And I was a cheap, like college kid, kind of that age. And it was one of those things where it was like, it got its oil changed once every 6 months if I was lucky. And it just kind of kept running like clockwork. I traded it in and it got me basically what you bought your Cavalier for. It got me 3 grand and it was all donked out and looked like a
Don't.
stupid broke teenager was owning it for the last 5 years. So
Nice. Yeah, I don't know. Mine's had a few accidents. It's all been repaired, but so I don't know how much value's left in there, but
yeah, but
you know,
at a certain point, I think one of the things that makes the opposite lot community so awesome is it's those crazy stupid cars that we kind of seem to gravitate towards because who else is going to give them the love?
That's it. There was once this article on the front page. It was this guy talked about. I think it was Jason, but I might be wrong. He talked about, well, he went to some automotive museum and talked to the curator, and the
Hmm.
curator said, well, it's easy to find mint condition Mustangs and Camaros and anything, especially more expensive like Jaguars and whatever.
Yeah.
But he said, like, I mean, it's really hard to find. Like, if you're doing a serious automotive museum, like
Hmm.
it's really hard to find, mint condition Ford Tempos, mint
Yeah.
condition Pintos, mint condition like Corsicas. You know what I mean? These ordinary cars that.
Which is really a shame because when you think about it, that's the car most people have the most memories in. I mean, they're not. It's like preserving the supermodels and like the famous actors and everything, but then forgetting that there's normal people in the world. Like most people drive a Cavalier, or they drive as much as I hate to say it, they drive a fucking Camry. I mean, those are the cars you need to save. I mean,
Yeah, I mean they're all part of our childhood, right? The our family beater was a Corolla, so.
yeah, we. I don't know. My family's cursed when it comes to Japanese car. We had a '93 Camry, lasted us like 3 years before door panels and shit were falling off of it. Which,
Someone around here has a 93 Camry, and I mean, that's impressive. We get like, it's cold here a lot, and there's a lot of salt. And his Camry, it's looking a little worse for wear, but I mean, there's not too many cars from the 90s you see still driving up here, so.
no, I love seeing old cars, like specifically like the old beater crap cars from the '90s, still driving around, still like every time I see like a '91 Saturn SL, I'm just like, whoever is driving this, like God bless you for still driving this car because
Yeah, fair
it's such
enough.
a flashback. But the thing about the Saturns is they don't rust, so that's cheating because they're plastic. But
Right.
yeah, I got a good friend of mine who I he has a '98 Corolla. He's had it like for forever, but he eventually traded it in because it was falling apart on him and got another '98 Corolla. Same
Uh,
colors, same stupid like spec and everything. And what made it hilarious is it even had like the same crack in the windshield he had from like '98. It's like how did you manage to find your car's clone from this age? It's like apparently just every one of these cars has this thing.
that's see that's one thing I won't do. Like the my girlfriend,
Yeah.
her mother, her mother hit has a Sunfire,
Yep.
and she hit a deer, so she bought another Sunfire.
Yeah, that's yeah, Sunfire no like
No.
no. I don't. I have a particular hatred for those cars, and I can't explain why. Like,
I just know, like, once my Cavalier dies, I'm not getting another Cavalier. That I know.
well, you know that because you probably have the last Cavalier driving around in the country of Canada. So,
This is true. And it's also, I don't know, I mean, I've had it now. I bought it with 90,000 and as a kilometers. And as I
yeah,
said, I'm at 202 now. So after, over 100,000 kilometers of driving one car, I'd like to try something else.
yeah. Like I don't go where I went. I bought 7 cars in the last 6 years, so don't do that. It's too far the other way.
Fair
But
enough.
the wife doesn't like that. So driving around in Canada.
Hmm.
So you've driven in the U.S. You've driven in Canada. Which one has the better drivers?
The better drivers. Well, I'll tell you, you know what? Ontario has the faster drivers.
They, in my mind, better immediately because faster.
In Ontario, yeah, man, the speed limit is only 62 on all the highways.
Yeah,
However, you have to try to get caught to get caught speeding on an Ontario highway. No, not on the northern 2 lanes, but on the southern 4 lanes, like,
hmm,
or more. I mean, the 401 in Toronto is like, I don't know, 12 lanes. It's a lot.
yeah,
Either way, yeah, no, like the 401, they go like 80 all the time. Don't matter. They go fast, and I can't even keep up. Like I'll do 70 and just stick in the slow lane and pass the trucks, and that's it.
it, I'm imagining lane discipline's a lot better up there than it is down here. But
On the
eh,
401, it's pretty good.
yeah,
That's the main highway in Ontario that connects most of the big cities.
Yeah.
And on there, it's pretty good. People don't really hang out in the left lane there a lot. On the in the cities, it's a little like on the spaces in between the cities, it's usually really good. And in the cities, it's a little bit less because then sometimes you get goofy things like left exits and stuff, and that kind of.
Whoever designed and builds a left exit should just be executed. Personal opinion, but
Yeah, no, there's one real goofy one around here that I hate every time, and it's like, oh yeah, you're driving along, and then all the trucks want to get in the left exit, so then you have to slow down.
yeah, it's like we've been doing good. We've got this lane discipline thing going on, and now both lanes are screwed, and no one can fix it because all the trucks have to get off. There's a particular exit around here where a lot of trucks need to get over into the left lane and get out, and it just fucks up traffic basically every rush hour for hours upon hours because everyone's got to slam on their brakes because every semi needs to merge at the last possible second over into the left lane, and no one wants to let them. So,
Well, yeah, that's not that surprising, really.
no.
Here we've done the opposite. See, Ottawa has done a particularly brilliant thing with their truck route. Is the Ottawa is sort of like DC in a way that it's bisected by a river.
Okay.
And on it's called the Ottawa River, imaginatively.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one side is Ontario, and on the other side is the province of Quebec. Yeah. And so there's two, like the city on the Quebec side is called Gatineau,
mm-hmm.
and the highways on these both sides run east-west, and there's no connector between them really. And so what happens is there's a lot of industrial stuff in the Quebec side. There's big industrial parks and things, so that's tend to be where trucks go.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the trucks will be coming from Toronto or coming from Montreal, because if you were to come from Montreal, usually you would actually go through Ontario to come here, even if you were going to the Quebec side. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so you come through and the trucks get off and they go through this goofy system where it's like they have to drive downtown and make a right-hand turn and then go 2 blocks and then make a left-hand turn and then go down this big road that's 40 kilometers an hour, which is like nothing. That's like 20 miles an hour, if that.
Yeah.
And then get on a highway again. And it's really stupid.
The only city I know of that it has that stupid system here is Indianapolis. If you're trying to drive from the west side of Indianapolis to the east side of Indianapolis, from one major interstate to the other interstate that connects basically the east coast to the west coast, you have to drive through downtown Indy, and not like a nice part of downtown Indy. Like I think I saw a guy pleasuring himself in his pants the last time I drove through there. Not good parts. So
this part's not. It's so. Parts are okay, but it's just you got like they have this one spot, right? The right-hander I was telling you about.
Yep.
The truck's going the other way, got to make a left hand. Now the corner is so narrow that only a truck going right or a truck going left can go one at a time. They can't both go. So they have to rotate, and it's just stupid. It's just dumb, and it's really sad, like because pedestrians get killed there, not infrequently. So yeah,
it's one of those things where it seems like such a small, stupid thing to complain about, but it's a huge issue when it comes to the civic planning thing, and I don't know. I'm crazy. I think politicians shouldn't focus on schools or education or any of that thing. It's like, just fix the roads, and I think everything in life would just work so much better.
Fair enough. So, you talked about driving here in the United States. Driving there in the United States. I will say the one place where the lane discipline is bad in the United States, Washington State.
Really?
Yep.
I have never been up that far. I've made it to the West Coast, never to Washington.
Well, that's West Coast.
Well, I've been out. Well, I'm saying I've been out there, but I've never been north.
There.
The furthest I made it out was San Francisco. The furthest west and the furthest north out that way.
Okay. Yeah, Washington State, I got a ticket one time. I passed a RAV4 on the right-hand side in a flame-colored Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
And flame-colored Mustangs tend to attract police attention. They did not take kindly to that.
No. So they gave you a ticket for passing on the right?
And also speeding, of course.
Yeah. I'm just surprised they actually gave you a ticket for passing on the right. I'm like, people.
Yep. I don't know. They were doing we came over from British Columbia,
mm-hmm.
and they're doing traffic blitz. It was like, I don't know, we passed so many cars from BC on the side of the road, and I just kind of knew. I was like, man, we're gonna get caught.
Yeah. Well, you're driving a flame red Mustang, so that's kind of
Exactly.
pull me over. Like,
Bait.
yeah, this is why I
So
drive a gray Volvo. Doesn't attract too much police attention.
my Cavalier is great too. It used to attract a lot of police attention, I think, just because the noise.
Yep.
But then I moved away from where the police station was,
Mm,
and I got pulled over a lot less.
that'd do it. So I know like the way the territories are set up there, like they go really far north. So what's the furthest north you've been up there in Canada?
Well, yeah, I haven't been too far north. The furthest north I've been is probably Prince George, which is about halfway up British Columbia.
Yep.
The territories, I've never been. I'd love to go. Yeah, they they only have a few roads. It's not like Alaska, where they have different roads and stuff. And the
Yep.
territories, there's only a couple. I mean, none of it. The easternmost territory, they don't have any roads that connect towns to towns.
Hmm.
So there's nowhere, like, I mean, there's nowhere to drive there, right? Like, you just have the roads in the town, and that's it. There's no roads out of town. None
I,
of the towns have that.
I guess you have to fly everywhere up there.
Yeah, fly. That's what they do, I think, as
Yeah.
far as I know. And then Northwest Territories. I mean, Yellowknife is about 20 hours north of Edmonton, so that's a ways. I've never been, but it's kind of the way Canada is just geographically. The whole west of the country, right, sits to the north of the whole, pretty much east of the country.
Yeah.
And so when you go through northern Ontario,
Hmm.
it is it's weird. Like, you're south of Western Canada, but it's truly a north place. There's, when we drove through there in 2008, there is not a lot of there's not a lot of towns in
Yeah.
between. Like, at one point we went about 600 miles. Yeah, about that. And well, maybe about 500 miles, sorry. And the biggest town you come across is population 3,000.
That's crazy.
So, and there's only like 4 towns in total.
Yeah. Like, where do you
go
get
through,
gas?
so.
Like,
Well, this is it. Like, when you go through some of the towns, it's like, okay, there's a sign at leaving. It's like last gas 273 kilometers. So that would be like 160 miles.
yeah.
So you're like, oh, I wasn't planning on getting gas, but I kind of am now.
Yeah.
Like, I have 3/4 tank, but I may as well just fill it.
Yeah. Better
So,
do it just in case.
yeah, Northern Ontario, it's so vast like that. Like, it's, as I said, 26 hours almost end to end from Ontario, from Eastern Ontario all the way through Northern Ontario to the western side.
Wow.
And when we went through, we came across at one point a huge mining convoy, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And like big old was it one of those huge ass like dumpers and all that stuff, or like?
No, it was different types of mine equipment. I'm not sure. It wasn't vehicles they were carrying.
Okay. Gotcha.
It must have been. I couldn't even speculate. I know it was huge and it was gray.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And they're carrying this thing, and the wide load was so wide that it was hanging over, the white line on the side of the road.
Yeah.
It's hanging over that, but it's also hanging over the center line of the road as well.
Wow.
Like, as it's going down, and he's got escort vehicles and stuff, but he's still going full speed, and there was like 3 of these. And so I'm trying to get past these guys in a Ford Tempo, right? It's just so hard. And we get into this passing lane. Like, there's most of it's 2 lanes, but sometimes there's a 3-lane section, where
Yeah.
you're supposed to pass. We're passing this guy, and what comes the other way but another big truck, right? And I'm just like, good Lord, this is terrifying. So we're in between this huge gray thing and this truck's coming the other way. And we're just like in this little car, and I'm like, oh man. And I wasn't that old then. I was only 20.
Yeah.
I was just like, man.
But not a car that screams "I'm great" in a crash to Ford Tempo.
No, that car, I mean, when I did crash it eventually, 2008.
Hopefully not out in the middle of nowhere in Northern Ontario.
No, we were in town here in Ottawa, and I hit a F-150 that decided, in its infinite wisdom, it should turn left directly in front of me.
Oh, okay.
And, it was kind of funny. I was talking to the insurance adjuster, and they said, so did the airbags go off? And I said, what? And they said, did the airbags go off? I said, it doesn't have any airbags, so no.
That's got to be a long time since they've had that answer to that question. No.
Yeah, no, the woman was kind of like, "All right, 92, no airbags," especially because here in Ontario, right, everything rusts. So I mean, even in 2008, it was the oldest car on the road.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I remember in '04 I had a 93 Tracer that had one airbag in it, and driving around Chicago may have been, it definitely wasn't the oldest car, but it was definitely the shittiest car, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, the Tempo was not
Actually,
uh,
weren't the Tempo and the Tracer the same thing?
no, the Tempo and the Topaz were the same thing.
Oh, I had a
The
friend who had a,
Tracer, I
yeah,
don't know. No, that was be the same thing as a Ford Escort.
yeah. No, I remember the Topaz. Now, yeah, that thing. Who came up with that name? Like,
The Topaz,
what the hell does that mean?
it's a stone, right?
Yeah, it is still, but like, okay, most of the time, like you go Hyundai accent, like, okay, kind of doesn't make sense, kind of mildly racist, I guess, something like that. But at least it inspire. Like if you think about it, really, it's a Hyundai accent, so it's like no crazy Korean accent. But like, or an F-150 or like a BMW, where it's like this is Topaz means nothing to anyone that I know. It's like I think everyone has the same reaction of like, isn't that a rock? Like, why am I buying this car? Like an Escort at least is a thing. A Tempo at least inspires like movement.
An
Uh,
Escort is a thing, isn't it?
well, you can escort someone, or you can like it's an action, like or a tempo. A tempo is a beat. It's movement. It's an idea, and it's like, well, what's your thing? It's a rock, like fucking Charlie Brown. It
Well, I
doesn't
don't know.
mean anything, and once you figure out what it means, it's like, oh,
What's a Camry?
not too. Well, good point.
What's a Corolla? Nothing. I think actually a Corolla might be something. I think
It's
it's like a piece of a flower. But
it's a stand-up comedian. I don't know that much. So.
yeah, that's true.
But it doesn't. Again, like it should either mean something that inspires like oh good thoughts, at least something better than a rock, or it should just be nothing.
In this vein, I looked at the new Mercedes lineup and noticed that I don't know how many cars they got, 8 or something.
Yeah.
4 are G somethings
Mm-hmm.
or maybe S somethings. Now
Yeah,
I'm forgetting.
like
I think S.
yeah. So they got the GLK, the GL, and the G wagon, and then
Yeah,
so that's three that I know of.
they got at least 2 S's,
Yeah.
and it's just like, well, I don't know. In my opinion, like you could have done better.
It, as much shit as I like to, because Mercedes is one of the worst people at that. They're nowhere near as infuriating to me as Porsche is. I can't keep Carrera, like Cayenne, like whatever the little Cayman thing.
Mm.
It's all a little bit too close and a little bit too like I don't know which one is the one that's actually good anymore. Like I got you could say I have a 911 fucking Cayman, and I'd be like, oh, that sounds like a thing, or I have a I don't know. It just fucking infuriates me.
It's tough to keep track of these days. I was trying to sell a piece of furniture here on, Craigslist or whatever, and this
Mhm.
guy says I drive a Kia something magenta. I was like, all right, what? What is that? Look it up. It's this mid-sized Kia. I'm like, oh, okay, it won't fit.
Yeah.
Uh,
In Kia has got to be one of the worst in terms of like, well, I don't know, because they got the Sportage, and I don't know, they've gotten a lot better with their naming nomenclature. I assume there's some subtle differences between here in America or here in Canada, but I don't
I
know.
think most of the models are the same these days. The only thing we seem to get that
Hmm.
you guys don't get anymore, we had Suzuki's around for a while longer.
Yeah, good luck with those. Those things. I every now and again I see one of those on the road and I go, oh yeah, those were a thing. It's probably good they don't exist anymore.
I liked one when I wrecked the Tempo. I had a SX4 rental car
Hmm.
for a while.
See, that means like I'm going to go ahead and assume that was the small crappy sedan they made for a little bit.
No, it was like this little mini crossover SUV
Oh,
thing and hatchback, like jacked up.
oh, was that
It,
the successor to the Samurai? Maybe is that what I'm thinking
no, that's the Grand Vitara, but
of? Oh,
You'll get it yet. Anyway, like okay, do you know what a Subaru Justy is?
Yes and no. I know of it, and I can't picture in my head. It's like a small little SUV thing. Is what's coming to my
Yeah,
mind.
it's like
Yeah,
a small little, like basically hatchback, but it's
yeah,
4x4, right?
yeah.
And it's kind of jacked up from the ground. That's what a Suzuki SX4 basically is, but modernized. It's like
Mm.
a little 4x4 hatchback that's high off the ground.
See, that's kind of endearing, but I feel like they missed a big market share if they would have just shoved their motorcycle engines into everything. I feel like we would have liked them better.
Yeah.
It just like because they can't really make a good engine on their own, and to kind of just eh. So if you're just hey, we put motorcycle engines and everything, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's at least a thing. At least you have an identity.
I mean, you got to keep in mind here, coming from a 1992 Tempo
Yeah, that's
with a
true.
3-speed automatic, so a Suzuki SX4 is like a rocket ship. I mean, compared to that car, and I say this, people laugh, but the Cavalier
Mm-hmm.
is a rocket ship compared to the Ford Tempo. Well, yeah, because A, it's standard, so it's
Yeah.
5-speed.
Mm-hmm.
B, Cavalier supposedly puts out 140 horsepower compared to 92 horsepower for the Tempo. And that's a big difference. That's like 50% more power.
Did you guys ever get a Zuzu up there?
Yeah, we have a Isuzus. Not anymore, but we used to.
Yeah, they don't exist, I think, anymore. Did you ever get a? Did you ever drive a Trooper?
No, I saw one in the junkyard the other day, and I said, man, I have not seen one of these in forever.
They so some cars get like a bad rap for being really slow for no good reason. Like old Citroens and like weird, crazy French stuff is always like well 0 to 60 in like 60 seconds or whatever. I
Mm.
don't think there's ever been a slower car to 60 or 100 if you're Canadian than a Isuzu Trooper because it had like the engine out of a Cavalier shoved into like the like giant. No, it wasn't out of a Cavalier. I think it was out of like a Tercel, and it was like shoved
Wow.
into this big fucking SUV. And it was like, how do you make it above 40? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like it kind of
Yeah.
it made sense back in the day. Like, well, we'll have the Americans do the body, and we'll have the Japanese do the engines, and then it turned into, hey, we came with a like 1.6 liter engine. What do you guys have in terms of the body? A full size SUV. Like
You
what?
know, a battle tank.
Yeah, like my I have an O for what I have. It's a 1991 Volvo 740, which is putting out maybe 86 horsepower, and that thing's a rocket ship compared to an Isuzu fucking Trooper.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think there's anything worse, and I think that's what killed off that brand. Like,
Fair enough. I don't barely remember the other cars they made. They had another one, Rodeo, a Zuzu Rodeo.
yeah, which sounds like someone who's trying to be like sophisticated, saying rodeo. Like,
Yeah, I don't know anything about the Zuzu Rodeo,
yeah,
whatever it is. A lot
mm,
of them were green. That's what I remember.
yeah, they were always white in Chicago, and they very few I see here in DC always seem to be some sort of like weird hyper color. I don't know if it's like paint jobs or whatever, but I
Hmm.
see them very infrequently now. Normally now all I see is their trucks. But it's kind of an interesting thought because it's like Isuzu just crapped the bed and died off, and then Suzuki just kind of like no one gave a shit, and then they just disappeared. Because
Yeah,
honestly, not bad cars, not good cars, just kind of like,
the
eh.
Samurai is kind of a little cult car. Even today, you still see them around.
Oh, I'd love to get my hands on one, but you can't find them for cheap anywhere because they do have that cult following for because they're it's a cute little SUV. So,
They're fun. They like to tip over,
yeah. Oh, is it the Grand Vitesse? You were telling me this is successor to that thing. I
Grand
think
Vitara, yeah.
yeah. One of my high school classmates had one of those in like pastel green, and that thing liked to tip over a lot. It was like the weird pickup truck version of it, and she would like be on
Okay.
her side like probably once every other week, like put it back. At least if you're gonna make a car that tips over, make it light, and they kind of followed that philosophy.
That's good. I have never tipped over a car, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tip over a Cavalier.
I would imagine. I don't want to know what you had to do. Just like this Mustang you came across. I
Yeah.
don't want to know what
Like-
exactly they had to do this. But
That still drives me nuts to this day because there was no signs of like any sort of like runoff. There was no sign like of like any tire marks on the ground. It was just how did this Mustang get upside down on its roof? It's like God came down, picked up his little Hot Wheel car, and put it on its roof, and went, "There you go." Like, how does this happen?
there was, I don't know if you saw, well, maybe I posted it to Opposite Lock a while
Mhm.
ago. There was this car crash in Edmonton. The guy was trying to outrun the cops, and he hit a curb.
Hmm.
And this is one of those things where it's like, wait a minute, how did this happen? He hit a curb and went into a house, and he was going so fast
Hmm.
that he went through the house from the back,
Yeah.
like through the fence, through the deck, through the living room, through the kitchen, and into the garage with the car. And then so the car went in the back of the house, like, left all this havoc. And then when they had to tow it out, they towed it out from the front because it was so far in that it was just easier just to pull it the rest of the way out.
Yeah.
Impressive.
That is impressive. I'm picturing that in my mind. If I remember, like a nice white picket fence, like it looked like a very nice house, and then you just have a car slammed into it. I've read a story recently about a guy basically doing that to his own house on purpose because he was unemployed and like a contractor, and so he just decided to do it for shits and giggles because he's like, well, it's my house, it's my property, I'll just fucking do it.
That sounds stupid.
It took place in Florida, so does Canada have a Florida, or do you just call it America?
I mean, I don't know. We got Newfoundland, which is the butt of many jokes.
So Newfoundland is Canada's Florida.
Sort of. It's a bit different. Like weird things don't happen there. Well, I mean, okay, some weird things happen there, but it's not a lot of these crazy Florida stories you get.
Yeah.
It's just more of they talk different, so we make fun of them.
Hmm. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed in your accent. I don't hear the aboot.
It's the Canadian accents, they have been changing recently, I think, and also no one ever said a boot.
Have I been lied to my whole life about Canada then? Because that's all I knew from growing up as a child to now was the aboot. Has my whole life been a lie? Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I'm telling you. I mean, I've lived here now my whole life, and I've never heard anyone ever say that, except Americans saying that that's what we say.
Maybe you just can't. So yeah, we were supposed to take a break about a half hour ago, and we never did. All right. So thanks everyone for listening. We're gonna go ahead and head out. Will, any last words?
Keep calm and carry on. And one of the things that I really like about, I mean, first off, thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I haven't listened to every episode, but I've listened to some, and I've enjoyed them. And they're good when I'm working away and stuff. And the other thing I'll say is, Raf Orlov had a great quote, and he said, don't let anyone tell you can't have fun in the most boring, mundane automobile. And I drive a boring, mundane automobile, and I take this quote to heart. So,
yeah. Well,
so thank you for having me on.
I really appreciate that you listen, and I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you for coming on. You have yourself a great evening. And
You
everyone
too.
else, whatever time of day it is there, have a good night. All right. Thank you.